So what I'd like to do is a couple things that I outlined in your project feedback. And then I'd be happy to take questions about anything else. And things can be, specific to your projects, the questions that you ask. As I read them, I'll be able to synthesize how I can answer that question in a way that's not like super specific to your project, but more accessible to others as well. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. So I think you're seeing the GitHub and the RStudio, right? Is that correct? Okay. So what we'll do is we'll play with this kind of mock account that we have. And I actually test some of the stuff out for you all in a team I have for Florence Nightingale, and it's called Florence in the Machine. So this is Florence in the Machine's proposal repo, okay? And what we have here in the repository is I added 2 issues to it that sound similar to the ones I've added for you. So we can go through some of the processes here. So let's go ahead. And so when you land in your project proposal, the first thing you should do is go to the Issues tab. And you should take a look at this issue that says something like feedback, overview, and scores, okay? I don't know why it has that labels thing there. Probably a copy pasting, but it should look something like this, okay? And up here on top, this is when I posted this issue, I tagged you in it, as in I tagged your team. So an email got generated likely. It may have gone into your spam, but an email should have been generated telling you this. And here you have some information about your workflow and I'll walk you through what I mean there in a second, and then your score. So Florence in the Machine got a 2 out of 10, for example. It's just a made up score here, okay? Now the thing is, if you just look at this issue, it's unclear why this team got a 2 out of 10, because all it says is here's how you can resubmit your work, but it doesn't give you any information. And so to understand exactly what are the ways in which this team needs to improve their work, should they choose to do so, you want to go back to the Issues tab and you'll see other issues posted here. And just out of sheer laziness, for this particular team, I didn't post a whole lot of others, but for each of the other teams, there should be at least 2 or 3 issues posted for you. And so your goal is to kind of go ahead and take a look at those. So for example, for this particular team, I had something like preliminary exploratory analysis missing, okay? So what we want to do is we want to kind of add this information and then close the issue. So I'm going to first walk you through that process, okay? I'm going to first walk you through how does this team address this? And actually a few of you had this situation where you hadn't shown me any sort of summary statistics or plots, even though we asked for it in the proposal, and you may have gotten an issue that sounds exactly like this. So then going back to Florence's project, that would be somewhere in the proposal folder. So this is their proposal for the team. And, they haven't done a whole lot of stuff. So let's say that this team now actually does some sort of exploratory analysis. So let's say they actually make some sort of plot. They're working with the penguins data, which none of you should be working with. And I think none of you are, because that was something we covered in class. So that's why I picked one that wasn't covered in class. So let's say that they're going to make a, no, what were the, maybe if I do names. So let's just say that they had something like this. Okay, and we'll go ahead and knit this. And here they have now their part of their exploratory data analysis. At least they have a plot. Now, a plot on its own isn't enough. So if your team submitted just a plot, chances are I gave you feedback saying I need a little bit more about that. So really in your data analysis plan, you would have something like we plan to do blah, blah. To start this off, we plot blah, blah. And then that's your plot. And based on what we see here, next steps are Something like this is probably what your proposal actually looks like, okay? So there is some narrative, not just a picture. But let's go ahead now. They had their exploratory data analysis was missing, and now they've added it. Now what should they do? How do they close that issue? So if we go back to GitHub, this is issue number 1, right? So we're going to go ahead and commit this. And as a quick reminder, let's look at this diff screen. Our markdown document is the source code. The markdown document is the outcome, right? So that's the output. So we want to definitely commit both of these things. And then what ends up going into this folder called like _files, if we actually take a look at what's in there, it's the figures that you create. It's basically that picture that's being pulled into your markdown document, because when you push these things to GitHub, there's no facility to run our code on GitHub within your repository. You want to push basically all of your output, including your figures as well. So we check all of these boxes, and let's say added exploratory data analysis. And then you use one of the magic words. So the magic words are things like closes, closed, fixes. I put them in your kind of issue as, I think there's 6 of them, something around closes and fixes. And then this is closes number 1, okay? Because that number 1 was the issue number over here, right? And let's go ahead and commit this. Nothing changed here because I've only committed it. I haven't actually pushed my changes. And now let's go ahead and push it. And her username. And her password. Okay, so now this has been pushed. And what we can see here is that the issue is now closed. Now, closing an issue isn't deleting an issue, but this is how we basically keep track of our work. And the nice thing about this workflow, and this is a very real workflow. So if you look at like any open projects that people are running on GitHub, you're going to see exactly this sort of thing when there's an issue and it's being fixed. So that issue is being addressed with a particular change to the repository. This is how programmers and data scientists basically manage their work. The nice thing about this is that now we have a record of what happened, and it's really easy to see from this record exactly how it was fixed. So you can imagine something even more hairy that you're resolving here, and you can go exactly and say, that's the change that happened that fixed this issue. Now, especially with your situation where you're working in a team with multiple people, this also allows you to say, hey, you do this issue, I do this issue, whatever, and you can actually each like contribute to that. And then if there is some sort of a, maybe my teammate, David, thinks that this is not the right plot that we wanted to do, but sees that that issue was closed, then he at least knows to like ask me, hey, why did you do that? I'm sorry, hi, Florence, why did you do that? Okay. So this is how we want to go about closing these issues. And then ultimately what I've asked you to do is at the end, if you're done, if you do actually want to submit your proposal for reevaluation and you're done, then you can say done with, I don't know, proposal improvements, ready for checking or something like that. And then if you want, you can add me here, or if you don't, I'll still get that email. And then you can actually just comment here. Why am I asking you to do this? Because not everybody's submitting stuff. So this time I'm not going to just like go through and take away everyone's permissions to push and make myself go through to see if everyone did it. If I get a ping like this, then I know to check your work. If you email me to say I'm done, you're going to get an email back from me saying, put it in the issue. Okay. Because that's like the best way I have for actually being able to manage these things. What I do, in case you're interested, is that I actually use this package, and I'll just show it to you because why not? This R package that has a bunch of functions for working with GitHub. So I can actually do things like take a look to see stats from each of your repositories, and I can see how many issues are open and stuff like that all in one go by pulling that information back into R. And that's what I use to manage your work, to see what do we need to do next, whose work needs to be marked next. So that's why I'm asking you to keep the conversation on GitHub. That's for my ease. The other reason is because we are trying to teach you the data science workflow, and this is a real part of the data science workflow, and so I want you to get used to doing that. The one thing I did mention in my email today is that I didn't manage to get all of your proposals done as evaluated as early as I would have liked. As I said, I've been a little bit stressed and distracted over the past couple days, but if you are done with them by the deadline, and I'm not like moving the deadline, because I know that sometimes deadlines can be really good like motivators psychologically. So if you're done by 4 p.m. on Friday and you ping me, then I'll look at it over the weekend. But if you feel like you need a little bit more extra time and you'll turn it in, what did I say, 4 p.m. on Monday, just leave an issue, like comment on this issue here saying we're going to need a little bit more time with this, and I'm going to like approve all of them, you know, like I'm not going to evaluate or whatever, and I don't care if I got yours early or late. Things are shitty enough as they are, so we'll just like run with that. Okay. So if you need more time, do that, because I happen to know that I'm not going to get through all of them over the weekend. But let's not let that drag much longer, because I'd like you to come to a point where we're done with our reproposal. And from this point onwards, you'll get another round of feedback, and then you're going to be able to carry on with your work. The other reason why we are going to kind of put an end to that reproposal stage is that in the next stage, we're actually going to have you do peer review for each other. So we're going to get you to work on your projects a little bit more and then get feedback from each other as well. And so I want things to be at a stage where they're a little bit more moved forward from where they are right now, so that when you do your peer review, you can give useful feedback to others. And the other reason for doing the peer review is so you can learn from others what they're doing, because some of you are doing pretty cool stuff and others are doing really decent stuff, but then maybe not as creative, and it's an opportunity to see what people are doing. You're going to get to see each other's presentations at the end, but that's too late. Like at that point, you can just say, oh, they did something cool. You can't really any longer say easily, I'd like to do something like that as well. So this should be an opportunity to learn from each other. Okay. Any questions about this, issues, closing them, and this sort of workflow? I have one other thing I want to go through in detail, but any questions about this? What proposal score is considered a good score? I would say anything 6 or over would be a good score. And this is, I'm especially saying that because you're getting to do them again. So like you might evaluate as, if I have gotten lower than a 6, maybe that usually means, just so you know, you were actually missing a component, as opposed to you've done it and it wasn't in depth enough. That usually means you were missing a component, in which case I would strongly encourage you to actually go back and do the reproposal, just so then you can get feedback. Because if you haven't turned in something, then you didn't get feedback on your actual plans. And so those of you who have turned in plans, I've been able to give feedback, like maybe you might want to concentrate on this, you might want to do that. But if some of you haven't actually put in certain components at all, then I just said I have nothing to give you feedback on. So if you have issues like that open, I would encourage you to resubmit for sure. Yeah, so that would be, so let me answer Rory's question here, and I'll show you what I have here. I think a good way to think about the code book is thinking about the data documentation you've seen so far. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, because I was using a data set from a package here as well. Oh, I don't have the package loaded for a reason. So I'm going to go ahead and open up that package website. And so you've seen this data set before with the penguins from the videos. And in this particular proposal, Florence and the machine team is working with this penguins data set. The data dictionary should look something like this. Now, I'm not saying it should be formatted exactly the same way, but let's to think about the components of it. We have some information about what the data entails. So a lot of you had good kind of variable names and then the descriptions, but you didn't have any sort of narrative on top saying this is blah. So it's like you have some songs maybe in your data, but I don't know where they came from or whatnot. We also want to indicate the rows and the columns, and I've also added in many instances a note saying also tell me what the rows are. As a statistician, seriously, the first question I ask people when they come to me for consulting ideas is that, like, okay, think about your data frame. What does each row represent? Because knowing what each row represents, is it a single penguin? Is it a single species? Is it a single island? Tells a lot about how you're going to structure your analysis. So you want to put that information in your code book as well. And then some sort of a reference. So this would be a reference to where you got your data from at a minimum, in which case for this particular project, we would say, I think I have my code book here for this project. Here we go. At a minimum, you would maybe link to the package. So I've done that. You might go a step forward and also say something like, and this is where those data actually came from. So if you know the provenance of the data, it's useful to do that. Personally, I don't care about particular kind of formatting and stuff when it comes to citations in the context of this, but it should be nicely legible is really the most important thing. It shouldn't be all over the place. But it's useful for us to know in the first instance where you got the data from, and if you know if there's information there where that data came from as well. And that second level information where that data came from, whether you put it or not in your code book is not as important, but you should know that information, because it's only when you know where that data came from that you have an idea about the scope of your inference. Was it a random sample or not? Was it collected as part of an experiment or not? If it was observational data, say, I think I've seen a lot of Spotify songs, what years, how were they collected? So this sort of thing you need to know because you need that information for your proposal. Okay, so Stella asked a good question. If you are in a situation, I was guessing that I would find out about this as I read through the peer evaluations that you did so far. If you have gotten a feedback that says everyone should contribute, but you happen to be one of the few teams where maybe somebody has just been AWOL this whole time, they haven't contacted you, you haven't been able to get in touch with them. My intention in those instances is not to, like, at that point, what we need to do is we need to remove that person from your team, and we'll address it that way. So if that's the case, if you can comment as an issue, like underneath that issue, saying this is the reason why not everyone has kind of contributed, I will follow up with that. And if that means, turns out your team genuinely is a 3-person team, not a 4-person team, then we'll handle things accordingly going forward. For many of you, where you got that issue about everyone should contribute, there was instances of maybe you worked on things together, but not everybody committed. And I know that it might feel like, yeah, but we worked on things. What more do you want? But what more I want is for everyone to actually start building the muscle memory for doing these things as well. It is great if everyone has contributed. That's obviously a better situation than what Stella asked in the chat, but it is still not perfect if not everyone is actually making commits and actually writing some code and writing some narrative, because that's part of the learning outcomes of the course as well. Absolutely, Jake. So you can, the nice thing about working on GitHub is that, I mean, ideally you're getting together to chat about certain things with your team, but the issues are there. You can fix them as they come. You don't have to be doing them all at the same time. You can just message each other and say everyone takes one issue and we'll handle them. That's absolutely fine. That's your, whatever workflow works for you. So let me show you what I'm looking for in terms of contributions. No, not everyone has to commit to every single issue. Everyone should commit to the repository. So if you go to your repository, you'll be able to see the contributors here. That basically means at some point in time, these people have contributed. You'll always see me because I opened up your repositories, But in this team, there's supposed to be what, 8 people or whatever. I don't know how many people we have, like course staff and some of the fake accounts I have, and only Florence has worked on it. So David's been slacking off. He hasn't been contributing. So now he knows. And so now he'll have to. Okay, that's really what I'm looking at here. Now I wanted to walk you through one other thing, and this will be something new, but I think it will be something useful from a workflow perspective. So we have data in our data folder, okay? And it's the penguins.csv data. So yes, this comes from a package, but I wanted to try to make it a little bit more like your projects, where I actually added the data file here. Okay, and if I knit this document, everything works. Okay, but if I just run this code, oh, obviously now still because I had loaded this beforehand, let's just go ahead and clear the session. Yes. If I just run this code, it says I can't find it, because the reason is data penguin CSV does not exist in current working directory. And the current working directory for your projects is what we call the root of your project. So where you begin, basically the project, which in your files pane is going to be right here. So each of you, when you're working in RStudio Cloud, this is your current working directory. So then why is this not working? Let's talk a little bit about what is happening over here. And I've left this comment for some of you, or I think we've discussed it on Piazza as well. The proposal document is in a folder called proposal. And in there is this document. So what this ... is saying is, in order to find the data file called penguins.csv, you have to go one level up. So you can see it's the same ... here, one level up. And then go into the data folder, and then you'll be able to see the penguins.csv here. And just as a note, this is not our syntax. This is exactly how the file structure on your computer works as well. So ... are always getting us one level up from folders. So when we're knitting in our markdown document, our markdown document says wherever I live is my current working directory. And so to reach into the data set here, I need to go up, find the data folder, and go down in there. Okay. But when I try to run this code in my console, it is not recognizing the fact that the code was originally included in this R markdown document. This is the same as you typing code in the console. And it says, well, I can't find it, because if you think about it, it is if I think about my current working directory here, which is the kind of the root of my project, to find the folder called data, I don't need to go up first. I would just need to do this, and then it would work. Yes, would you work? I don't know why it's stuck. It's giving me an error, it's just stuck. Let's refresh. Okay, so it did work, but I don't know why it was stuck there. Let's do it one more time. I got rid of those. I will load my packages, and I will run the code. So now it works in the console, but if I try to knit it, then it's not going to work again, because now we have this mismatch between the working directories. So this is a frustrating situation to find oneself in. So I observed that the way some of you have solved this situation is by moving your data folder into your proposal, and then it's kind of like things worked. But the thing is, we want the data folder to be a separate folder, because it's going to be used for your write-up ultimately at the end of the semester. It's going to be used for your presentation, and it's used for your proposal. So we don't want them embedded under different folders. So here's a solution for you that involves a new package. So there's a package called here. And let me see if I can find the package website. Is it? I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. So there's a package called here, And it's useful for finding your path. Okay. What it does is it basically tells us, so if I load the package here, and you may need to install this package, but let me load it. And I say, tell me where here is. It basically tells me where my current working directory is. But nicely, it doesn't just tell me, it basically prints it out as a character string. So what I can do is I can say, find here. And so I can add the package this way, okay? Loading the package, and I can say find here, and then from here, you wanna go into data and then find the penguins data set there. So now if I run my code in the console, it works. And if I knit my document, it works as well. Because it's always looking at finding out where your the root directory is and then looking for things underneath it. You will often see that people use this package like this, just because it has a funny name for a function. And I think it's kind of funny to say here. I think that's why people use it that way. But this notation that you might come around if you look for any sort of help on this is when we are using a function from a package and we want to specifically specify which package it's from, this is the notation that we use. So I could have said things like this read CSV function we know is in the readr package. So I could do this for all of my functions, but usually we don't have to do this when we're doing our analysis. But I wanted to show it to you because it might be that you come across a situation where you look for help on this package and that's what you see. There's another reason why you might want to do this. There is, so another package we learned about is Lubridate, right? Here we go. And let's take a look at the reference for this. So Lubridate is about, oh, it doesn't have the here function. Is it really not? Maybe they fixed it so that it doesn't collide. And it used to have a function called here that would collide with the other one. So it was useful to do that. I'm not curious about it. Let's load it. Library. Yeah, okay. Then you don't have to worry about it. Never mind me. So you can use it this way or you can just do this and it's fine. This way, your code will work whether you just run the particular chunk or you knit your document. So I would recommend that as a solution for that. So what I'll do is maybe for the next time we're doing a lab or something where we're loading a data set, I'll use that package as well. So you see it in one other place too, but it will be useful. It's especially useful for situations where we're using the data for multiple pieces of our work. So far, this hasn't come up prior to the project for us because you've always had in your assignments a single R Markdown file in your project repository, and then you would have a data folder, and then everything just kind of worked magically. But as the kind of the complexity of the project you are working with increases, relying on a single R Markdown document becomes not that useful anymore. It's not good enough at that point. So in which case you might organize your work in different folders, and then you need to think about where are my files? Where are my files located on my computer or on the system that I'm working with, and how do I access them? So getting a handle of where files live and how to get to them might seem like a mundane thing, but it's actually it's a big barrier to doing work, organizing your work, and having a good organization for your data science project is incredibly useful to get this sort of kind of workflow hygiene, if you will, is incredibly useful for you, a skill for you to pick up earlier on as you're learning about these things. Any questions about this? So let me see. Does that mean that you can use packages with overlapping function names? Exactly, you can. And the way you would do that, since these happen, that you might get various packages that have the same names. The way you do that is by kind of making sure that you put the package name ahead of it as well. I will mention that, when you're doing your own data analysis yourself, you kind of know which packages you're using. So if there is a collision of names, then you know how to kind of address it. And otherwise, you don't have to worry about the 10,000 other packages that exist, because you know the little subset that you're working with. If down the line you are a package author and you are writing code that will live in a package that other people use, then you always want to do this for any little function that you kind of write, because you have no idea in which environment your users are going to be using your package. So you want to be specific. The remaining stuff for this week, I'll post them today. I just finished all the what do you call it? The proposal stuff. So I'll post them today. Tomorrow's lab will be a short bit on data science ethics. So we'll work you through one case study. And then the remainder of the time will just be, if you are done early with it, will just be to work on your projects. Any other questions? Everything seems clear about the proposals? Everyone knows where to find their issues? So just today, I will be working on them right after this. So if your data comes from a package, no, you don't need to put the CSV in that folder, but you should still have the code book. So you don't want to make the person going through your work and evaluating it to have to install the package and read the code book there. You should put that in there. One other thing about both this question and also that will pertain to a lot of you. So many of you use data from Tidy Tuesday, which is perfectly fine. But there was like a little bit too much just copying and pasting everything from the Tidy Tuesday repo to your code book going on. Now, I don't want to be unrealistic here. There's only so many ways you can describe certain variables, and sometimes your certain descriptions will sound exactly the same as they did on the Tidy Tuesday website. It's fine. But when you also copy and paste the narrative and everything else, and you've clearly not even like really read about what it's saying, but you're just including that information, that's not exactly fine. So go back to how you've structured your code books and take a look to see if this is just factual information and I have cited exactly where it came from, that's fine. But if it's more of a narrative, then maybe you want to trim it down into your own words. The code book, your code book should only live here. So another common issue that I commented on was something like you've duplicated your code book, because some of you in your data analysis plan just said, this is our data set and these are the variables we're going to focus on, and that's fine. Some of you had your code book in your data folder and then literally copied this whole thing and then pasted it into your proposal as well, without any much additional narrative, maybe something like this, and just saying, these are our variables. I mean, you've already said these are our variables, so you don't need to say that again. What we're asking you for in the proposal section is a narrative on what are you going to do with these variables, as opposed to duplicating information you've included elsewhere. Does a peer evaluation affect our grade? So there will ultimately be a peer evaluation for these projects, and that will affect your grade. But the peer evaluations that we're doing throughout the semester are really meant to be informative. They're not necessary. If your teammate missed their, their deadline, that's not going to affect your grade in some way. The way I use those peer evaluations is to give you an avenue to just reflect on how the teamwork is going, and also for me and the remainder of the course staff to be able to identify where there are issues, like somebody doesn't show up to anything or something like that, or they haven't been responsive, or maybe we have some team dynamic issues that we want to consider. So that's what they are. At the end of the semester, there will be a peer evaluation that says this is for the project. And that score will affect your project score. Dominic asked, should we worry about the permission to download data from Kaggle? If it's not allowed, you shouldn't do it. If that's what you mean. If you have a specific case you're asking about, I'd be happy to take a look at it.
Is Dominic talking about when you download from Kaggle, you have to have a username and like a password and stuff in order to download it? I don't know if you want, because there's ways that you can use packages where it pops up in the console. Please put your Kaggle username and please put your Kaggle password in here. That might be a way around it. Do you know what I mean? No.
No, I'm not sure.
So when you download, I've only used Kaggle once or twice, but I think for most data sets you get from Kaggle, you have to have already made an account with Kaggle. And if you're pulling the data down from Kaggle, it's not like Tidy Tuesday. You have to provide some sort of like username and password to Kaggle in order to download it. So if Mina, if you didn't have like a Kaggle password or data username, you wouldn't be able to download it until you've done that or something. Mm-hmm. I think it's something like that.
Is there a permit? If it says you can't download this data and then put it elsewhere, then that's a problem. But I didn't think Kaggle had that rule, but I don't know. Things may have also changed.
It might depend on who's setting the competition. Certain competitions have different rules. But there's what I would recommend for Dominic is just to have a look at. You can get these packages where in your it'll print to your console and say, please type in your Kaggle username and then please type in your Kaggle password. And it doesn't save that it doesn't save that anywhere, but it means every time the user runs it, they just need to have that extra step. You know, like when you're pushing to GitHub, you have to put your username and password in. It's kind of the same thing. And then they'll be able to download the data set, or should do, when they're running the code as well. So that'll allow.
Yeah, that license should be fine. If it's public domain, then it's public domain. Then you should be able to download it and upload it wherever you like. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry if I've added some confusion there, but it really depends on what the data
no,
set is.
But that is an important point that you want to take a look to see what that license is. So let me see. Why here can be used to substitute ... it is current place cannot go back as ... to right. So the reason why you can use it to substitute is because when we think about, so what I had here originally, let me go ahead and undo this. When you are when you're running your R Markdown document, you do need this because of where the R Markdown document lives. It lives in the proposal folder and it needs to reach back out and then go back in. So if I knit my document this way, it's going to work. But many of you aren't just knitting your documents. You're also working with your documents in a way where you're running the code one chunk at a time, as well, just to interactively test things out, in which case this doesn't work anymore, because when you're running your code in your console, the working directory is not the proposal folder, but instead it's the root of your project. So what the here package allows you to do is to say, whenever I run my code, always start here, and here is always the root of the project. So now it doesn't matter how you wrote things. You're basically going to be able to, it doesn't matter whether you're running it in your R Markdown document or in your console. This is literally equivalent to doing this. So if you had just done this, this would be equivalent. The thing is, the nice thing about the here package is that now if you port this code elsewhere, and I've seen that some of you are working with teammates who are actually working locally as opposed to working in RStudio Cloud, for example. And so then they're going to have a different file structure, a different hierarchy. They won't necessarily have a folder called Cloud Project. So the here package allows for portability between people's various file structure setups really easily. Let's see what other, oh, here we go. You don't need to repeat the data dictionary in your proposal. Does it refer to the introduction? It refers to wherever you may have copied and pasted the same thing from your, so in, I wouldn't say many, but in some of the projects I've seen, you had a data dictionary and then you just copied and pasted the same dictionary without any additional narrative and without anything giving any reason as to why you're listing all of those variables again. In your proposal, maybe this is a good way for me to put this. Try reading your proposal out loud to yourself. If it just sounds like, how am I going to read all of these words? Do I really need to be reading all of these words? Then they shouldn't be there. Okay, so this is the sort of information that's good for reference. That's why it lives in a README. But your proposal should have a narrative associated with it. So instead of this, the proposal said something like, we'll focus on these aspects of the penguins, specifically using the following variables, and then just the names of the variables, that would be fine. That's something that's readable. But if you just have a list of all of your variables and their descriptions here, that's not really a readable thing. So Arjun, here just takes you to the current working directory, in this case, it is the main folder of your, in the context of RStudio Cloud, that is indeed the main folder of your project. All right, we're almost out of time. So if you have any other last minute questions, do put them. Oh no, we do have another 10 minutes. I'm sorry. If you have any other questions, put them in the chat, or otherwise, if we're going to wrap things up early, that's fine too. All right, then I will stop sharing and stop recording.